Hello? Oh, thank God you're alive.
Not for the faint of heart, Outlast 2 is an anxiety-inducing but cathartic horror experience. While it suffers from a couple of pacing problems and some finicky navigation issues, its sadistic manipulation of my fight-or-flight reflex had me experiencing an overwhelming sense of dread throughout, which abated only once the credits were rolling. Its ending, however, stayed with me for days.
Their infants dashed to pieces all. Their women with child shall be ripped up.
Outlast 2 sends us to the less trodden road of the Sonoran Desert, where protagonist Blake Langerman is searching for his wife Lynn after crash landing in the cult-ridden Supai region. This is deep south horror, all untamed cornfields, dilapidated shacks, and, go figure, gory remnants of unspeakable religious rites. It's a lot more open than the original, which adds to a more authentic horror experience. With multiple spots to hide in and run to, it's easier to lose enemies, but it's also harder to see them coming. The larger space also encourages disorientation and therefore a sense of desperation. Linearity in Outlast 2 is deceptive, so each escape feels skin-of-your-teeth frantic thanks to smart world building. Much of this comes down to Outlast 2's use of lighting. You're armed only with your camcorder's battery-reliant night vision mode to make your way through the omnipresent darkness, and because you spend most of your time being chased, you have to rely on the most basic of visual signals to stay on the right path. Dim lighting always marks the way, but never obviously enough to dim your panic. The only real aspect of Outlast 2 that breaks the illusion of authenticity is Blake's frustratingly context-sensitive and inconsistent movements. Although he can jump across wide gaps if they're there to be jumped across, he can't leap over small objects on the ground. And while he can clamber over some waist-high obstacles, he can't climb over others of similar height. Couple these limitations with your own frantic panic, and you've got a recipe for instant death. And you will very likely die in the 13-odd hours of Outlast 2, as I did multiple times. Like the original, you are completely unable to defend yourself, so fleeing or hiding from your enemies are your only real options. The garden variety enemies are dangerous, but its real star players are the handful of creatures who pursue you relentlessly and kill you in one hit, much like the Xenomorph in 2014's Alien Isolation. These enemies make for Outlast 2's most frustrating moments, as your encounters with them tend to have instant win and fail states, and therefore encourage often exhausting trial and error rather than on-your-feet thinking. On the other hand, they also make for Outlast 2's most frightening moments, as Red Barrels has built wickedly creative scenarios around them to maximize their impact, resulting in the stuff of nightmares. Throughout it all, Red Barrels has explored giddy themes of struggling with one's faith and the extremities of belief to varying degrees of impact. Outlast 2 jumps semi-regularly from the present to the past, where we revisit the heavily Catholic school of Blake's childhood. These more quiet sections start off as welcome reprieves from the mayhem of the present day, but gradually take on a far more sinister turn as the events of the past begin to unravel. Some of Outlast 2's most emotionally effective moments occur in the fluorescent flickered corridors of Blake's school. However, there are simply too many of them with too much repetition, and during the middle of the story they drag down the pace significantly. More, to understand the deepest nuance of these sequences, you must record certain vistas and objects around the world, and then play them back to gain an insight into Blake's head.
A teacher once told me that the music of birds was proof that God exists and loves us.
Considering how horrific the world is, the impetus to voluntarily explore more of it is low. Still, the messaging in Outlast 2 is broadly effective, and I applaud Red Barrels for tackling such ambitious subject matter. Its bold ending, in particular, will inevitably divide players' opinions. As for me, I thought it was a tour de force that made me laugh in disbelief. Even if its ambitious themes don't always land, and navigating through its world can be frustratingly inconsistent, there's more wicked creativity at play in Outlast 2 than I've seen in a horror game in a very long time. Play it loud and in the dark. For more on Outlast 2, stick with IGN.